This is Overtime, a weekly moment of off-the-cuff commentary on everything from sports and politics to observations about everyday life from NFL All-Pro Carl Lee. Welcome to Overtime.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carl Lee, and this is our Overtime of Let's Talk. We've had a conversation, and we've been continuously having conversations in and around transfers, coaching, and one of the interesting components to me is all the folks who talk about coaching and what it is and what your responsibilities are. And Dustin Resler, South Charleston's head football coach, who's just starting into his first season and tough opening week. But I want us to have a conversation about the challenges that come with it, whether it's, sometimes parents get upset because of the way the game goes, the play calling and all this kind of stuff. Just kind of having a conversation of your enjoyment and some of the challenges that you faced when you were named the coach. Yeah. So, Coach, talk to us.
Well, let me tell you, you have this kind of idea in your head of what it's going to be like as a head coach, and then you kind of throw a portion of it out the window. Don't ever do it. I got on social media and I was just like, well, what are people going to think about this? And the first thing I saw was the librarian, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
Let me just so you know, I got a ton of calls of what is South Charleston doing? And I'm like, no, he works at the school. That's what he does at school. He's played football. He's coached football. He is not just a librarian. He's an IT guy.
Yeah, I'm the school's technology. I'm the school's technology teacher that just so happens to be in the library. No.
It's that's crazy. But again, all of that was to diminish the reality of a choice of picking a coach. Yeah. Which makes no sense. No, I don't think they knew you, but all they took was just the information and grabbed a piece that would make it sound as bad as possible.
Yep. Yeah. And, as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, maybe I've made a mistake by looking on social media. So I've kind of cut myself off to it. Just, I've kind of opened up our social media presence, especially on Facebook, getting our schedules and everything else like that out. And just kind of drowning out the rest of it. I don't want to look at comments. This is about the kids.
Right.
I took over as, a head coach, because I love South Charleston. I've been a teacher in the building for this. I think this is my 9th year in the building. And I truly love South Charleston. I've had opportunities to go other places, but I love the kids.
Right.
The building and everything else. But, when, I actually talked to Donnie right as I was taking the job, and one of the things he said is, "Man, he's like, I don't think you're aware of how much time this takes." Because when people see you take over a job like this, you get the criticism of he's just doing this for the money. Oh, or he's doing it. Let me tell you, yeah, exactly. What money? The amount of time I've spent, during the off season, I'm leaving to go home at 10:30 at night. I've jokingly said there's a couch in the coach's office for a reason. I was at the school, Sunday morning at 7:00 in the morning, so I can make sure I had everything opened up so that we could have our coaches meeting and get ready for the week. We have coaches meeting for 4 and 5 hours. The amount of time and the amount of money. Me and the other coaches, we buy food for the kids because some of our kids, they may not get a meal when they get home.
Right.
So we keep peanut butter and jelly sandwich stuff. We keep, sandwich meat and stuff like that. That's stuff that I don't go and ask our athletics department for. I don't pull that out of our booster funds. I pay that out of my own pocket because, I've been telling our kids this since March. I said, we're a family. I said, I have three kids of my own. I said, y'all, I spend more time with you guys than I do my family right now. I said, we are a family. And like that's the commitment I've had with the kids, and it's been really nice like seeing the kids like commit to that. But like that was one thing that like you have an idea of it as a taking over, but to actually like see it happening, it's like wow.
To that point, so when you took over and you said, okay, I'm the head coach. I know for me, when I took over and I was like thinking the head coach, I knew that I was not going to be there very long. My role kind of was to build some culture, create some discipline, and I wasn't interested in a long time coaching kind of thing. So when you took the job, your initial thought was to do what? Like what did you see as the most relevant thing that you needed to do to start this path of culture, discipline, and all those kinds of things?
Well, and actually it has to do with like my interview. When I talked to Bryce and to Miss Williams, I said, we need to focus on building a program. I said, this is a long-term project. Mm-hmm. This is we need to pick out a few things that we want to change right now because, as a teacher in the building, when football's not very good, and, we've struggled even when I was assistant coach, we had down seasons. The building is just weird. Right. Like the building's not good. And, I told Miss Williams when I took the job, I said, I can't change anything in the building, but I can affect 40 young women and men on how to be better people. And that shows in practice. That shows in, how we do everything. Off-season program, everything. That's what we need to focus more on is building, instead of building a team, building a program. Mm. Something that will outlast me.
Right.
And I told him, I said, I'm in it for as long as you guys want me. And the running joke is, when I first started teaching, I was like, I got 30 years till I retire. And I told someone, I was like, well, they might fire me after the first year, but I can tell you right now, I've got 22 years left before I plan to retire. And I'm willing to do it as long as they want me to.
So let me ask you, because we coached together at South Charleston my first couple years. So, and then you stopped coaching for about a 2 or 3 year period. So it's kind of a 2-part question. Why did you stop coaching and what brought you back?
Well, I stopped coaching. I was kind of on the borderline because my kids were starting to get older. My kids were starting to get interested in sports. And, like my wife was like, I need help with, doing some other things, to be able to get kids the other athletic events and everything. And so I was like, okay, I'll step away. And then, so I stepped away, and it just so happened the pandemic happened. And it was honestly a blessing. I would have had to have left anyway. My youngest has an autoimmune disorder, and like it was one of those things that, being away during COVID, I would have had to have. When everything started happening, and when you had to step away, it was like one of those things that like, how can I complain about things that are going on in our building? And I talked to my wife about it, and jokingly, I've said once that, oh yeah, she was fully on board with me doing this, and like, she said, I need to do what makes me happy, and she knows that she was with me when I was playing college football, and she knows the amount of time that is spent in coaching, the amount of time I spent playing, and she was behind me on what was going to make me happy, and she knows that me being happy with me being on the field coaching. I love football. I tell our players all the time that, like, listen, football is a grueling, miserable sport at times.
It sure is.
People don't really get that. They don't understand it. Yeah. Like training camp and just camp, any camp at any level, and practice 2 days, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It is not just something that you just say, oh, gosh, I just want to go do that. I want to go spend time in 80, 90-degree weather in helmets, shoulder pads, and pants and practice 2 hours. Uh-huh. That's not something that everybody wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's so. I tell the player, and I tell them this every week. I'm like, you have to have fun. I was 100%. Like, even when you're getting beat, man, you gotta listen. We're gonna have fun. You know, we have fun every day in practice. I find a way to have fun in practice, even with our even with this. I have an accountability at our with South Charleston. I call overtime. So, like during our periods that we run our practice, if we have failures inside of that practice, you get an F. A coach says, "Hey, coach, I got an F here," and it's because I've told our players over and over, I'm not a yeller, I'm not a cusser. I will only yell under one circumstance, and that is over effort. Because you can make mistakes. It's my job as a teacher and as a coach to correct those mistakes. However, effort is on you. And so those are things that we hold ourselves accountable for. We hold ourselves also accountable outside, because I tell them all the time, you represent South Charleston, you represent Dunbar, you represent yourself, you represent this team, and you represent me. So if you make the team, you make the family look bad, we all have to be accountable for that.
Right.
And so if I get a message, like I had a message from a teacher, I had a kid that showed up late and was dancing in class. Well, I said LATE and then DANCE. All right, that's 9:52s we got at the end of overtime. And it's really funny because all of our kids have gotten really good at spelling, because I had another issue today, and like one of the kids was like, "Oh, disrespectful. Coach, that's 13. That's 13. No." I was like,
coaching style is like, I'm not a yeller and a screamer, because I get it. Everybody's going to make a mistake. So that's not an issue to me. But what is an issue to me is when you're not working, when you don't put in an effort. And the consequences to that has always been running. And it's usually the whole team, because it is a team. And I think people miss that. The idea and the concept of the relevance of everybody being punished when something goes bad. You know, now maybe it's a little different if it's in the classroom or something, it's that guy or whatever. But in most cases, it's the team.
yeah.
When you do it, you're hurting the team.
Yeah. Well, I tell them all the time. I tell them, you know, the reason why we all do team accountability for stuff that happens in the classroom or stuff that happens outside is because we are too big of a football team. You're never alone in a class.
Right.
So we all hold ourselves to that because we are all together. Listen, we all know it. Football's become a year-round sport. As soon as you hit that off season,
every sport.
Listen, after Thanksgiving, we're in the weight room.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way it is. If you want to push yourself to that next level, I tell them all the time. If you're either going to talk about it or you're going to be about it.
Yeah.
If you're going to be about it, then you got to be about it in the weight room. You got to be about it in practice. You got to be about it in the classroom, because all college scouts are looking. All these colleges recruiters are looking at is, what are your grades, what's your discipline like, and how do you practice.
And I wish
the
we
films
could.
are extra.
I wish, man, we could communicate that to kids, to parents, because you could be the best player on your team, best player in the conference, best player, whatever. But what happens is when you all of a sudden don't have the personality, you don't, you're doing this, doing that kind of stuff. That'll cost you. That'll cost you more than a bad play. But we haven't learned. I don't know if we've gotten that far. But Coach, I wish you luck, and hopefully, you have the ability to be there. For today, we'll be back at you again soon.
The opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of WVRC Media, its management, employees, or sponsors. Contact Carl Lee on email, letstalkcarllee@gmail.com, or text 409-422-7539.